The Positive Pause is a motivational-minded podcast covering topics women want to know about as they journey to and through menopause, focusing on subjects that impact women's health and healthy aging, including what it means to age healthfully. The Positive Pause features experts and influencers from a variety of industries and specialties. The information and opinions expressed on the Positive Pause are not intended to replace the services of trained professionals or to provide specific medical advice. To see the National Menopause Foundation's full medical disclaimer, please visit nationalmenopausefoundation.org.
Welcome to the Positive Pause. I'm Claire Gill, founder of the National Menopause Foundation. Joining me for this episode is Dr. Ellen Albertson, aka the Midlife Whisperer. Dr. Ellen is a psychologist, registered dietitian, national board certified health and wellness coach, radio and podcast host, and mindful self-compassion teacher. She brings over 30 years of counseling, coaching, and healing experience to her holistic practice and transformational work. A best-selling, award-winning author, inspirational speaker, and expert on women's well-being, Dr. Ellen has appeared on numerous television shows and has been quoted in many publications. She has written 5 books and a variety of articles for major national magazines. Her latest book is Rock Your Midlife: 7 Steps to Transform Yourself and Make Your Next Chapter Your Best Chapter. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Ellen.
So good to be with you here today, Claire.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to talk with you about all the great work that you're doing. And I was fortunate to be introduced to you and speak with you on your radio show, Rock Your Midlife. And that is the title of your most recent book, as I just said. And the book is terrific. There's a line in the book that I love because it's visual and really describes what starts to happen for so many women. And this is the line. At midlife, the cozy, comfortable nest egg you built starts to crack. Did you get any kind of reaction to that? Am I one of the other people pointing that out? I was like, that is just so perfect.
Yeah, it's really true. I feel like, we spend our lives building the way we want our life to look, the way we want our career to look. And then we get to midlife and it feels like everything is cracking. And I also love the metaphor of thinking like a chick in an egg. When the chick runs out of food, it starts to peck ferociously. And I think at midlife, we're like, wait a minute, I've climbed this ladder of success and I'm at the top, but I am starving for something else. And the big point of the book is that sometimes the ladder's up against the wrong building. We build this big life for ourselves and we think it's what we're supposed to want. And we've changed and maybe we've done things because other people have told us it's the thing to do. We've wanted to please people. And then we get there and we're like, oh my God, it's cracking. It's time for me to do something differently.
I love that analogy too, because, the same thing we talk about like empty nesting at this stage, right? The changes to our bodies, maybe a few more cracks in our facial lines, all that kind of stuff. So I really did appreciate that and thought that was, something so relevant. But you also talk a lot in the front of the book, which I loved, about that there are pros and cons to reaching midlife. So can you share a little bit about some of those, what you think some of those pros and cons are?
Sure. Well, the pros are that we are just wiser. I think the first part of our life, 0 to 25, we're learning, and then we're like sort of seeking fame and fortune. And then we get to this midlife place where we start to realize, oh my goodness, there is less time in front of me than behind me. And so we get wiser. We've had a lot of experience. I'm always amazed when I meet these life coaches who are like 20. And I'm like, honey, you haven't lived yet. Wait till you go through kids and health crisis and divorce and all the things. So, we're wiser. We know ourselves much better. And, I think that as you were saying before, with things are feeling like they're cracking, we start to ask really deep questions about who am I? What do I want? As you start to realize that time is the big precious and you're running out of time, you start to say, what are the changes I want to make in my life? And I think we can get really courageous too. We can be really stuck because I think also the negatives are that we're really dug in. So we've got probably maybe kids and a partner and a home, and we might be, facing menopause and other health issues. So there's a lot of things there's a lot of challenges where, I remember, right, when we were in our 20s, everything would fit in your car. It's like all you had. There were no kids. Right. There wasn't the kind of responsibility. You weren't feeling like, gosh, I've got to like work for that paycheck so that I can afford to support everybody in my life. So I think that the biggest issues with women, we hear about the quintessential midlife crisis, but honestly, as Brene Brown said, it's an unraveling. And it's really, we are really stuck between, children and aging parents and the health issues. And we've got a lot of, we're running a little bit thin in terms of resources. So it definitely is a time where, there's a lot going on and it can make it difficult to find that time and space for yourself to try to figure things out. But the big plus is that we know ourselves. Hopefully we're learning to love ourselves. We're working on progress, not perfection. And we have a good sense of really what works for us.
Well, I think that's true for many, but I think a lot of women do struggle with that, a little bit of facing this change, and we all approach it differently. And I found that very much with talking with women and people about the menopausal journey, and where some women don't really notice, their periods stop, but they kind of just, went through it and nothing big. And for others, where it was so unbelievably traumatic physically and the symptoms and the things like that, that they said it was the worst stage of their life. So we all approach it differently, and so getting that kind of tools from as many sources as we can for what works for us, what makes it a good journey for all of us. And some people might approach, every year as something great and glorious and another year to be alive and yay, yay, yay. And others worry about that number, and I think we probably all have friends that, fall on both areas of that spectrum. Let's talk a little bit more, dive into a little bit more about the book, because in your book, you then cover the 7 steps to transform yourself and make your next chapter your best chapter. And they're all really great. But the one that you and I had talked about a little bit previously was the importance of, at midlife, step 2, befriend yourself from self-loathing to self-love. And that includes body image and the need for self-compassion. And I think, again, at midlife and at menopause, that when there are so many changes happening to us physically and emotionally, this is really a big one. I mean, there's so much to unpack with this topic, but let's start, if we could, by you explaining a little bit about how our body image develops and what influences it, because it doesn't start at midlife. Obviously, we've been cultivating this throughout our lives.
Yeah, well, the thing is that we start to experience awareness and issues with our body image. Even you ask little kids, girls, first, second, third grade, they already have this awareness that they're supposed to be a certain way. They're supposed to have a certain kind of body type. And this is largely because we have the media, which is always showing us images of perfection. And I think the media does that on purpose to make us feel bad about ourselves so that we buy products and services. If we felt great about ourselves, we wouldn't use all of the skin creams and the Spanx and the girdles and all of these kinds of things. So just to back up, body image has nothing to do with your body. Body image is in your mind. It is about how you perceive your body, what you think about when you look at yourself in the mirror. And again, we never really see ourselves, right? So we see this 2-dimensional flat image, or we, are looking at ourselves in Zoom rooms, or we are looking at ourselves on some kind of screens in Facebook and Instagram. So we never actually see what we truly look like, which I think is really, really fascinating. But we get this idea in our head about what we're supposed to look like. So we're either comparing ourselves to these people who look like they're leading amazing lives and they're thin and they're tan and they're just having the time of their life, or sometimes we compare ourselves to time in our life when our bodies were different. And I think the weight's a big issue, that there really is a lot of pressure for women to look and be a certain way. So there is, we start to develop this, and I think it doesn't go away at midlife. So most of the research on body image has really been conducted on teens and college women, largely because those are kind of like available in terms of studying. But the research really shows is that women at midlife feel, as bad or worse, because as you just said, like, waistlines are expanding. There is a natural propensity to put weight on around the midline as the hormonal fluctuations start to happen. We're also tired and stressed out. So we might be eating emotionally and to comfort ourselves. So there's a lot of weight gain there. Your hair is thinning and turning gray. You're getting wrinkles. So again, the media is telling us we're supposed to be thin and young. And then we look in the mirror and we're not that thing and we don't feel okay about ourselves. But the amazing thing is that you can transform your body image without doing a thing to your body.
Well, that's really what I would love to learn a little bit more about. And I know we're not going to be able to cover it all in a podcast, but we'll direct people to more of your work. But talk a little bit about what we can do. Because like I said, even those of us who I think are confident in so many areas of their lives, I mean, you joke about, what we're supposed to be. Oh my God, I wanted to be tan my whole life. And what people can't see on this podcast is, though, I am the palest person you can imagine. And I've never wanted more than anything to tan. None of the products work. None of the things work. But like you said, that's just not who I am. And learning to accept that has taken my whole life, so to date. And I'm probably still not there because I still look at a tan and think healthy. So talk to us a little bit about how we can improve and better our own self-image.
Sure. Well, it's sort of twofold. First of all, as women, we're taught that the most important thing about us is our looks. So first we got to get that off the table. And I think that that's a big piece of, feminism and the work that you're doing and realizing, my goodness, we have so many amazing things to own, how powerful you are, to own your self-worth and realize looks are not the most important thing about you. The second thing is to learn self-compassion. And so I started researching, thinking about, gosh, women have this body image, and I was one of those women too. And it has nothing to do with your body. Models, ballerinas, fitness trainers. I was a personal fitness trainer. I was that woman in my 40s in front of the gym. I was like an alcoholic working in a liquor store because I was a fitness fanatic, working out 4 to 6 hours a day with all my clients, cut up to the nines. And I hated my body. And my clients hated their bodies. And I would hand them weights and we would all complain. And we thought, well, when I lose the weight, when I get that six pack, when I have those buns of steel and those guns, love my body and more important, myself, but we never got there. So first I realized that the media does this to us. And this is, it's playing this mind game with us to sell us products. And then I was like, okay, so what am I going to do about this? And so I started thinking about it. My dissertation chair recommended I research meditation and see how that impacts body image. So I started Googling, and I was fortunate enough to come across Kristen Neff, who is the lead researcher and pioneer, along with Chris Germer, in this whole area of self-compassion. And Kristen was kind enough to be on my dissertation committee. She had one stipulation: I needed to learn self-compassion myself, which totally did a 180 on me, as I am the oldest I've ever been, and I feel the best I've ever felt about my body. But what my research showed, I did research on over 500 women across the globe. And what my research showed is practicing self-compassion. So essentially treating yourself the way you would a good friend, being kind to yourself rather than judgmental, understanding when you're stressed and struggling and giving yourself what you need, understanding that going through menopause, putting on weight, this is all normal. Nothing's going wrong. We are imperfect beings. Understanding these things and practicing it. What happened is the women who practice self-compassion for just 1 hour a week for 3 weeks, body shame went down, body dissatisfaction went down, self-worth and appearance went down, and body appreciation increased. Just by practicing self-compassion. It had nothing to do with body image. They were simply listening to mindful self-compassion meditations on Kristen Neff's website that I sent to them, and their body image transformed. So you can learn to love your body and also to love what you see in the mirror just by being kinder to yourself. And I think a cool thing that happens at midlife too is you start to appreciate function over form. Like personally, some days go by, I don't look at myself in the mirror. I'm just really happy that I feel good, that I can bike and hike and walk and lift weights and, put my bag up, when I travel, all of those things. And that to me is a lot more important than what I look like.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit more about, some of the steps we can get to for that when we do that self-compassion and what those mean, maybe what some of those mantras are, because like many people, I have a young daughter. I was a later mom, so my daughter's only 11. And I say this to her about, how she comments to me about what I look like is so positive and so lovely. And she truly means it. And I say to her the same thing, like, we have to talk to ourselves the way we would talk to our best friend, like that we would never say to our friends and loved ones the things that we say to ourselves. And even at 11, she does that. So I'm not only for myself and being a good example, but I also want to think about how we get younger people doing this earlier so that they learn this and they don't wait till they're 50 to get to the point where they love their bodies, you know? So when you talk about self-compassion, what does that mean? Are we saying things to ourselves? Is it little tasks that we do? How do we start to cultivate that?
Well, that's such a great question. And the thing is too, that it is a practice. So like anything like a yoga practice, a mindful eating practice, it's something that you do continuously. And the cool thing is about it is that is both a state and a trait. So some people are just naturally more self-compassion towards themselves, but it's something that is a state that we can expand and learn. Like we can go to the self-compassion gym. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing really is to think about, as you were saying, as you're giving yourself the self-talk, if you're going through something, so let's say, you know, you've had a fender bender, or you've been to the doctor and you've gotten some not good news, you've had a fight with a loved one, or had an issue at work. So you've had some stress or struggle in your life. Think about, if I had a friend going through this, how would I treat her? What would I say to her? Or if I had a wise friend, what would she say to me? So for initially, it's kind of hard for people to think about this self-talk because we're so conditioned to go right into beating ourselves up, criticizing ourselves, or going, woe is me, why is this happening to me? So think about the last time you were struggling with someone. And think about if you had a friend doing that, what would you say to her? And then say that to yourself. So yes, it's very much about changing our self-talk. When that self-critic comes up, rather than listening to that critical, judgmental voice, you thank the self-critic. The self-critic is just the internalized voice of early caregivers that told us, you've got to be skinny and clean your plate. You've got to get good grades, clean your room, whatever it is. And then we get to be adults and we realize we have internalized this voice because when we're little, if we don't listen to our caregivers, we're not going to be safe. We're not going to be loved. But the self-critic sticks with us. We think we need the self-critic in order to motivate us to succeed. But what the research shows is that self-criticism actually generates cortisol, which shuts you down. So when something difficult happens to you, you practice mindfulness, which is one of the 3 elements of self-compassion. You are mindful that you are struggling. You notice, gosh, I'm stressed right now. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It could just be like, I'm just tired this afternoon. Like if I had a friend who was tired, would I tell her to like drink a bunch of coffee and kick your butt and get pushed through? I would be like, no, take a nap. Give yourself a break. If I had a friend who was like, again, heard bad news at the doctor, I'd be, how can I help you? I'd come over, I'd make her dinner, I'd give her a hug, go for a walk. So you start to think about when something difficult happens to you, there's an active component of self-compassion. How do I actively care for myself? And what I often have clients do is just make a list of how you care for yourself and how you'd like to care for yourself. So maybe take out a piece of paper. I like the categories: body, mind, heart, spirit, relationships. So think about, how do I care for my body? I take a hot bath. I make myself a beautiful meal. I take a nap. How do I care for my mind? I do puzzles. For me, I like to play the ukulele because it helps me to be present and it clears my mind out. How do I take care of my emotions? I listen to music. I spend time in nature. How do I take care of my spirit? How do I connect with my soul? Again, it could be meditating, doing yoga, spending time in nature, going to a service if that does it for you. How do I connect with people in relationships? How do I have people in my life who support me? So you make this list, and then when you notice, I'm struggling right now, I'm actually suffering a little bit, you pull the list out. And so that's kind of an informal practice. It's also great. To take a self-compassion break in the moment. When you notice you're stressed and struggling, you just say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. That's the mindfulness, right? Suffering is part of life. That's called common humanity, noticing that nothing's gone wrong. The Buddha got it right. People struggle all the time. And then you're just like, how do I be kind to myself right now? How do I give myself what I need? And that could just be like, just going to go to the ladies' room for a few minutes and take a little break. When you're struggling, as a mom, you might be like, struggling a little bit right now. I give myself a little break.
I love the idea of writing down the list when you're in a good mood of all the things that you could do, or even the thing that you do for your friends, and pull that up and then like choose one, right? What's going to help me at this moment to get through that struggle? Because yeah, I was sort of, when I think about the self-compassion stuff, I'm thinking more about like that little mantra. And I'm like, do I need to say it out loud? Can I just talk, in my inner voice? Am I just talking internally? If that's not working, that's not cultivating it for me, what else can I do? And I know there's a big connection too between like writing things down and then practicing. Like sometimes we do better when we write things down like that. Isn't that true?
Yeah, writing is good. When we write things down, it actually activates a part of our brain. And I love that, you're trying, Claire, to find your compassionate voice. May I be safe, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be at ease, may not work for you. You might just be like, Claire, you got this. Claire, I'm here for you. One thing I love to do is in the morning, I just look at myself in the mirror and I say, hey, girl.
Yeah, great. Great.
Changing that dialogue and also looking yourself in the eyes, looking at yourself with those eyes of compassion, the way a wise friend would, and just say like, you know what? You're doing the best you can. You've got this.
Yeah.
I believe in you. So I love that you said that. I mean, certainly the list is awesome, but so much of it is about finding what works for you, finding the voice, the tone. And so much about it is tone. Like, how do we speak to our friends?
Yeah.
What posture do we use when we speak to people? And how do we do that for yourself? I mean, for you, it might be really helpful thinking about, what would my daughter say to me right now? My daughter looks at me with these eyes of love.
That's it. Yeah. And I love, like you said, it's going to be different for everybody. And I think about that and all the things that we try to do and put out there about menopause and menopause education and how to deal with the symptoms of menopause. It's not all going to work for every person. You need to do a little bit of exploring, to do that. But the first thing is to give ourselves the permission to spend time on this. I think my biggest struggle is I think, oh God, I'm spending too much time thinking about my own life and I just need to get on with it. But as you said, when you reach this stage of life and midlife particularly, and as you said, you realize there are less days in front than behind, I don't want to waste my time just pushing through. I want to make everything count. So I'm so appreciative that there are people like you out there to help women understand that it's okay to do this. It's important if we're going to be truly healthy that we do take some time to think about our own needs and our own compassion, and I think just discussing this topic is so important.
Well, your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you will ever have. We come into the world with ourselves. We leave the world with ourselves. We spend with ourselves 24/7. We're with ourselves all of the time. And I think, as you said, if we talk to our friends the way we talk to our bodies and sometimes talk to ourselves, we wouldn't have any friends. And it'll help you get through menopause. I mean, for me, learning self-compassion changed everything. It changed what I attracted in my life. It changed my wellness, changed my body image. It changed my relationship. I got out of a relationship that wasn't working for me. And now I'm in a really wonderful, supportive relationship where we're each taking care of each other and we're each taking care of ourselves. But, in terms of menopause or perimenopause, if you're going through it, you have this incredible practice when you're like, I'm really feeling tired today. And just stopping instead of plowing forward, you say, what do I need right now? Well, maybe I need to call my boss or leave a little bit early and say, you know what? I didn't sleep so well last night. I'm going through menopause right now. I'm really struggling. What do I need right now? And then that's that being kind rather than judgmental, not judging yourself for going through this, and then bringing that common humanity that most people in a female body will go through menopause. It's normal. And it's a wonderful time of life when you're going through things. That's the time to do the transformation.
Right.
Menopause is this great chrysalis, this opportunity when you are struggling. Things are being literally dissolved when you think about the caterpillar and the butterfly, where the caterpillar creates the shroud, it excretes this acidic goo. It has a couple of imaginal cells, which are actually the blueprint for the butterfly, but it dissolves everything and creates something new. And so menopause, I think for women can be a super amazing blessing, although it is difficult to say this is an opportunity for me to do some reinvention, to slow down. It's a pause.
That's right.
Slow down and pause and, see what's working, what's not working. How can I be a little nicer to myself? How can I know myself a little better? How can I take better care of my body, my mind, my heart, my spirit? How do I empower myself, whether that's in relationships, at work, or at home? How do I improve all my relationships? How do I connect with my spirit? So it's a great opportunity to transform your entire self.
I absolutely agree wholeheartedly. And I think that's, part of why I hoped the National Menopause Foundation could, help women think of that way, right? Bring that to fruition. Yes, there are things that we need to know, and education is empowering, right? So there's certainly a huge lack of education for us about what we might potentially be experiencing as we go through that. But then after that is that empowerment aspect, like you said. So, okay, I've got all this great wisdom. And like you said, I've lived a life. I can coach people on how to get through things. Now, what am I going to do? And I joke all the time that I haven't quite figured out what I want to be when I grow up yet, because every year is a new opportunity. So I don't want to say that I'm fully grown, because there's so much more learning and things that I need to do. So that's exciting. And we need to encourage women to think more about that. And you've done a masterful job of that. As we've talked about, and how you've done your own self-evolving and moving on to new things and trying new things. And so in addition to the book, you have the podcast, the radio show, Rock Your Midlife. So let's talk a little bit about that, and how do you come up with those topics, and what do you enjoy about that medium versus the written book?
Oh gosh. Well, I love radio podcast. I actually had a nationally syndicated radio show in I guess it was my 30s, for about 5 years. So I've always loved the medium. It's just a wonderful way to have enlightening conversations. And I think that meeting people like yourself, it's a great way to meet amazing women, help them to share their truth. And I think we're, in this place right now where podcasts and radio are really the only medium where we can do other things, right? We can garden, we can walk, we can drive, we can cook. So I think there is a tremendous demand. And my PhD was actually in media psychology. So as we were studying this, I started my PhD about 15 years ago, and we were all looking at, oh my goodness, this thing called the internet is going to allow every single person on the planet to have their own platform if they want it. So every single one of us is here for a reason. We all have a voice. And so podcasting is a beautiful way to share your truth, to connect with other people, to meet amazing people like yourself. I learned so much from you. I was like, my goodness, you were the first nonprofit for menopause. I'm like, where has this been? It was brilliant. And learning about, African Americans having a harder trouble with menopause, all of these things, we're all learning from each other. We're all growing. And I think that mainstream media can be pretty toxic. We were talking earlier about the way that we're shown these images, and it makes us feel bad about ourselves when we compare ourselves to these people who are really not real. They've been airbrushed and they've got stylists and all the things. And so we have a choice. And I think podcasting, we don't have to. When I wrote my first book years ago, I wrote a book, and, publishing was really hard back then, but podcasting is now very, very easy. Anybody can write a book. Anybody can have a podcast. Yeah. What I love about writing too is, again, you're just reaching people. And for me, both mediums have a different way of expressing myself and being creative. I just enjoy the creative process. And yeah. I'm not a fine artist. I have a sister who's an amazing fine artist. And part of me was like, oh, that's what creativity is. But now that I'm in my midlife, I'm thinking, yeah, it's writing, it's podcasting, it's doing the things I do in social media. We are creative beings, and podcasting is just a powerful, beautiful way for us to share our creations with other people.
And again, like you said, it's access, right? And the timeliness of it, that it gives people an opportunity to learn something new in a different way. I mean, I've made it sort of one of my things where I'm trying to read more books because I love to read. I would love to write one day. That's on the, the long-term plan, but I love reading. So having that, but again, it takes a little bit more time. Whereas like we said, with podcasting, we can do it on the go. They tend to be shorter in some, shorter format. And it gives us an opportunity to learn so much new things in such an easy way. So it's really, again, encouraging people. I've often told people when struggling, to find a podcast that provides like some uplifting information on whatever topic brings them joy or that they're interested in, and how that distraction of listening to a podcast or getting information from that or listening to a comedy one or something has been a real godsend, particularly during COVID when we were all, trapped indoors and not being able to reach out to our community members. So we will absolutely provide information about your podcast and radio show with the notes for this session, because I really encourage everyone to explore that as well. Because as you said, there's just so many wonderful, interesting women and men to speak with and to learn from. And that really excites me. So I know we could talk nonstop about this, and I'm truly excited that you've agreed to join our medical advisory committee for the National Menopause Foundation, and we'll be providing more great insights that we'll be able to share with everyone. But as we think about wrapping this up, our discussion for today, what's the one thing you would encourage all women to consider as they approach and journey through midlife and menopause? I know it's hard to limit to one, but what would be?
Gosh, I want to say, well, I'll say value and love yourself. And I'll say as a piece of that is that you are so powerful. As midlife women, we impact up to 4 generations. So we've got grandkids, we've got kids, we've got our peers, we've got our parents. And again, our culture says after a certain age, you're not valuable, particularly being a woman anymore. And that is a BS story. And I think that the exciting thing is that we're living longer. And so we have this juicy second adulthood. And think about menopause, midlife is this gateway to creating the life that you really, really want. Make a lot of mistakes early on. You're wiser and you can live your best midlife. I mean, I am kind of at the tail end of it. I just turned 60 and I am just having the absolute time of my life. So you can have it all.
That's awesome. I actually wrote that down, the generational power. I love that. And I hadn't thought about that, the influence that we have at this age. We describe it as the sandwich generation, right? We've got kids and we've got parents and the burden that puts on us versus the opportunity that gives us to make real impact and influence these other generations. I love that. That is a fantastic way to end this discussion. So thank you so much, Dr. Ellen, for sharing your expertise and insights with us. As I mentioned earlier, we'll post information about your website and your book and the radio show with the notes for this episode, so our listeners can follow up and learn more about you and your work. I hope you've all enjoyed this episode as much as I have. If so, please subscribe to the Positive Pause podcast so you never miss an episode. And please share the information about this podcast with your family and friends. Thanks again to my guest, Dr. Ellen Albertson, and thank you for listening. We hope you'll tune in to another episode of The Positive Pause. Thanks, Dr. Ellen.